everybody to be able to be engaged in this discussion.
So good afternoon. I am still Kevin Lemon from Virginia Beach Police Youth Services Unit.
Okay. And we'll get the officers and then we'll go to our panel.
My name is Darrell Howard. I am with Norfolk Police and I'm also the local chapter president for Noble.
My name is Norris Sherman. I am a fugitive recovery agent and I'm also on board for Noble as a sergeant at arms.
We will go to Lisa since you're right there.
My name is Lisa Savage, and I'm here representing Growth AKC.
My name is Craig Harrison, and I'm representing Child's Christian Church, and I wear many different hats here, so welcome everybody.
I'm Pastor Greg. I'm the minister here at Child's, and welcome.
I'm Vendetta Reynolds. I'm a retired military veteran, and I wear several hats. I do a lot of things.
Okay. So here's my first question. I want you all to think about this. What can we do to be more united in our communities, or do you think we're afraid of each other? And here's where this question came from. I think when we do things like this, people tend to segregate themselves, right? All black people will go where the black people go. All the white people will go where the white people go. We as a church, Pastor Ott has a church, Francine, my business partner, has a church, and we have the Korean church. We typically, Pastor Ott and Pastor Francine, we will get together and do things. The Korean church never participates. Pastor Ott will do a diversity thing and they'll participate in that, right? But they won't do that. And so when I started thinking about this particular question, do you think, what can we do to be more united? Because I think we're in that segregation thing again, and I don't think we've ever ended it. And so anybody on the panel can take this, because again, if that's the case, then police officers have a really hard time, because they're going to go. My son was a police officer for about 8 years in DC, and he said to me one day, he said, as a police officer, when we come on the scene, everybody hates us. It doesn't matter whether you're black, Asian, Puerto Rican, it doesn't matter. Everybody's calling names at us and all of that stuff. And so how do we unite a community that sort of segregates itself anyway? And I think it's hard for police officers, and you all, anybody can chime in, but this, I think, is a problem that we're going to have to figure out, because we're going to keep on having programs, and everybody's going to be, y'all go over there and do your thing, and we're not going to go over there in that zip code because that's where all the people from the hood lives at. You know what I mean? So that's my first question. What y'all think? Panel, go Van, you go first.
Personally, I feel one of the greatest hindrances to, we use this word, unite. That's a broad brush that we're painting at first. I personally feel that we need to start small. One of the things that I feel that is not happening is that, number one, I don't see you. And when I say I don't see you, I don't stop. I don't slow down. I don't give you eye contact. I don't say anything. I won't pass maybe, and I don't do that. So I'm using that in a general sense. Think about it on a personal level. Do you really acknowledge the presence and the existence of the human that is sitting next to you, standing in the line next to you, passing you on the street? Do you really make a connection? We have to start small. We want this thing to just explode and everything is going to be cool by y'all. But do you even know your neighbor? And so for me, I really feel it's a lack of communication and acknowledging that I see you. And we can start there, because I don't believe it. I don't see it happening.
Is that broad sense everybody?
And
you saying police officers, your neighbor next door to you?
Yeah, the police, when they, this is my personal experience. I'm gonna be honest with you. I call my neighbor first before I call the police, because I'm not sure what the response is gonna be. Am I gonna get the support that I need? I'm gonna call my neighbor first. And that is because too, do you see me? When you ride up next to me, when you ride through the neighborhood, do you stop? You say, I'm here, you show up when it's a crisis, but who shows up when there is not a crisis? That doesn't happen anymore. I grew up in a small town in North Carolina. We knew them. They came through the neighborhood. And so again, I'm thinking again, we need to acknowledge each other first, make eye contact, slow down, have a conversation. People congregate with the people that we feel safest with. You mentioned the Korean. Do they feel safe? Have you ever really just had a one-on-one conversation with them? They don't know you. They don't know of you. They know what they see in the news, what they read in the paper, what they hear. But do they actually know you?
Okay, I'm gonna stop you right there. And I want the officers to respond to that, because again, what I wanna make sure is that, I got two questions and I want you all to ask. Did you hear, you all heard what she said, right? That, do you want to get into this thing? Because he said another officer has arrived. And we want to make sure that, can we put a chair on the end for him, Andre? And then we can just, can you all kind of scoot over a minute? And front row, can you all just back your chairs up a little teeny bit? And then that way we won't feel so squished on the end. Okay, so it gives us time to transition a little bit, but you all heard the question, I mean the answer that she said. What's your response, officers? And any one of you all can take it. Okay, go first.
And the piggyback when she said it has to start small. I believe it has to start at home first. The big influence now that we have in this generation is who do they look up to? Who do they get their roles from? Whether it's social media, music industry, parents. What are they doing to show, hey, it's okay to interact? Now don't get me wrong, there are going to be some bad officers, but there are also going to be some great officers. And they have to feel welcome just as much as the youth, teens, or adults supposed to feel welcome. But what are we doing at home to encourage them? If me as a father, if I'm going to act a certain way when it comes to police involvement, my daughter pretty much is going to follow my suit. If that music artist that they like is going to act a certain way, pretty much they're going to follow that suit. So I think it has to start at home first. How do we raise our kids? What do we teach them?
Go ahead, Lisa.
So I feel a combination of both. I think also that we have to look at our personal experiences with the police. I think more community-based programs or intimacy between police and regular individuals alongside of what, like you said, social media. Social media has a big impact on not just children, but also adults as well. And then you have to look at the impact that adults have had with the police, whether it be a routine stop, whether it be an altercation that they weren't or they were involved in that may not have went their way. I think that, like she said, Ms. Van, when you don't feel seen or when you only see the police in times where it's tragedy or when it's gun violence or just a picture that's painted. Honestly, like she said, I could be honest, when Ms. V asked me to do this, I was like, sit with the police. You know, I don't want to sit and talk with the police. Not because I don't know y'all, but I know what my personal experiences have been. And some, I can say I may have been in the wrong or I was in the wrong. In other cases, I was just standing by and I just caught the line. Yeah, I was in the line of fire, you know, of the situation. But I think that with this police academy, I know that, like I would say what I told my children, I want y'all to be involved in this because I want y'all to see the police in a different light. So, and I want you all to see my children in a different light so that if you come across them in the streets, you know, and because I can do what I can do at home, but we all know with our children, we don't know what they do outside. I think I have perfect children, but you know, they may get around their friends and become a different person. However, if you know any of you officers see my three, which my son just went to that, but if you see my children and you know that they come to these activities and you know they're respectful and you build a personal relationship through these type of activities, and even if we saw you all in the street, you can say, hey, I know Michael, that's not him, and you come and you speak to him. Of course, I've built a relationship with you as well because I see you more often and I've developed that relationship. So I wouldn't be upset if my son said, hey, you know, officer such and such or police officer, because that's what we're going by. We're going by hearsay. We're going by other people's feelings towards, you know, like you said, if your daughter is going to do and feel off of how you act, but what if she comes to you with an incident with an officer that wasn't pleasant? You know, she's developed her own, so with you, she's gonna act how she's gonna act. But if she's independent, she may act differently. An officer may say something and she disrespects her. So I think it's just a combination of everything and just getting down to these type of deals where we get to know each other intimately and we establish a personal relationship versus a social media relationship or a relationship based off of someone else. You know, so that's my
Okay, Lieutenant Loki, do you want to address that in any way? Because my mind is on another part of this question. So do you have any comments that you want to add to this?
So-
Because here's what I'm thinking. You have, in terms of the police, how many police officers are in Virginia Beach?
Virginia Beach, approximately 800.
800. And when you think of the vastness of Virginia Beach, is it realistic for officers to be able to build those sorts of kind of relationships? And I know you have that whole new thing that you're doing, so go ahead.
So it is possible. The problem, and to respond to your concern, you know, right now we have been short staffed for a couple of years. We all know what happened in 2020. That hurt our staffing. Most days we don't have the officers working. They have the time to stop as they're driving through the neighborhoods. They're literally going call to call to call, and a lot of days they don't have time to eat, get a drink, use the restroom. They're literally going call to call. In a perfect world, yes, we would like to be able to stop as we're driving through the neighborhoods, speak with the neighbors, get out of the car, you know, and play basketball with the kids and things of that nature. It's not possible. Years ago, that could have been a possibility. Right now, it's very difficult. Recruitment and retention is a big struggle for us. So what we are doing, we created the Youth Services Unit with Virginia Beach back in January, and this unit is designed to bring all of our youth programs under one umbrella, to get out into the community, to meet the youth, to engage them, to build those bridges, to build that rapport with the youth. They are our future. So we have a bunch of programs that we are doing in Virginia Beach to do just that. One of them is a rec center mentor program. We are going into 7 rec centers in the city. We're just showing up. Officers who are, most of them are off the clock. They're showing up, whether they're wearing this uniform or they're wearing a t-shirt that says Beach Police. They're showing up, they're playing basketball, they're playing air hockey, ping pong, pool, or they're just talking to the kids who are hanging out there. If you've been to a rec center, you know that weekends and afternoons, it's full of teenagers. So we're meeting them in their turf, in a neutral environment. We're not asking them to come to us. We're going where they're playing. And we're going in, we're walking in, hey, we play with you, and we're playing basketball. And the teens love it. They flock to us, and we're having those conversations and getting to know them, because we want them to feel comfortable with the uniform that we wear, with us, so that if they are in trouble, or if they need help, or if they have information on a crime, or if they just want to come say hi to us, they feel comfortable approaching the uniform and talking to us. We're also, we actually just finished up this past Thursday. We had a chess club that we held at our law enforcement training academy on Ferdinand Road. That ran for 8 weeks, and we had kids coming in playing chess with officers. Several of the kids were on the autism spectrum, which was a benefit we did not anticipate, but it gave the officers a chance to interact with kids who are on the spectrum to get that experience, so that their first encounter with someone with autism who was not on the street in a crisis situation. It's at a chessboard in a more relaxed environment, so they understand those how they communicate. And then at the same time, those kids will gain experience talking with the officer, getting used to the uniform, so that if they do need help or they go missing, they feel comfortable approaching the uniform. We're actually starting another program similar to the chess club, but it's called Badges and Board Games. That will starting in September. We have flyers here if you want. But that is going to be ages 10 through 17. It'll be at the Academy off of Burbank Wednesdays for 7 weeks. And 10 through 17, it's going to be all kinds of board games. So chess, bingo, neck board, you name it, with police officers. But we're adding one additional element to that we didn't have in the chess club, and that is we're going to be providing 10, 15-minute life lessons, if you will, before each play session starts. So we're going to be covering topics like what to expect when stopped by the police, communication, de-escalation techniques, dangers of vaping, social media, and internet safety, and things like that. So they'll come in, they'll get a little bit of a life lesson, and then go across the hall and play for a little while. So our goal is to build those bridges, those relationships, while providing some level of education. The other thing I want to respond, I think one of the biggest hurdles we have currently in our society is social media and media. If you look at Facebook or you look at YouTube, there are people that make their living spewing hate. And it's really hard for us to build those bridges when we're only a small number, when we have people that are reaching thousands, millions of people with one video. And I'll be honest, I look at Facebook and I see comments. I don't see those comments playing out in my life. I don't see the hate in real life that I see online. I think people are intentionally trying to, ignite those fires to drive ratings, to make their money or whatever. So too many people feel comfortable behind that keyboard spewing that hate, and we know they wouldn't say it to your face in real life.
So the question was, and I'll bring it back to you again, because I heard what you said, I heard what you said. How do we unite? So I'm going to go with you, Pastor Ott, simply because you are a white pastor that basically lends your church to a diverse group of people. And the back end of this question, or do you think we are afraid of each other? And to me, to answer that question, I think we are afraid of each other. And I think what happens is, when I say we, collectively, meaning black people will go with black people, white people will go with white people, Hispanics, all that stuff. But we keep talking about how do we do this, and we talk about the violence and all of this stuff. How do we unite? Because I don't think it's going to be let's just do this in this community. I think it's going to take a unified effort of people coming together. When that whole George Floyd thing happened, you hear a lot of black people saying, we need white people to speak up for us, you know what I mean? And so I think in communities, until we have communities that come together and are able to sit with one another for solutions, we're going to continue to have these same problems. Because do we have more police presence in a white community versus the hood? I don't know. So I'm asking you to answer this question, and then we'll have to end because we already almost at 12:30. But what's your answer to?
Yeah, that's.
What can we do to be more united as a community?
Well, one of the things that I think is missing in our society now is safe places to have those conversations. When church, and I'm not trying to sell church,
right?
But church is a safe place,
right?
Typically,
yes,
okay, to come and have that conversation. And I think that, and I'm not saying it has to be a church.
Right.
Your idea that you just shared, that's a safe place. It's an open place. I mean, for example, I was all about the whole George Floyd thing. But if I would have walked downtown Hampton when they were rioting to say, hey, I'm on your side, that first thing they do is run me over. Because I was afraid that's going to happen.
Right.
You're asking if it's a fear. or not.
Yeah.
We've had this conversation. And that's why I said, that is one of the things, the Korean folks, to just use an example, they're very comfortable with us,
Right.
but they do their own thing.
Right.
They're very isolated,
Right.
and their pastor lives in Northern Virginia. So he's not here to get them, you need someone to say, okay, it's all right to come do this thing. Because we actually have Korean members that came from this church that now come to our church. It wasn't a sheep stealing thing, it was just that there was an issue, right? But it's a safe place to have a conversation, a safe place to have this kind of dialogue. One of the things I'm going to piggyback on it, one of the things I think is that for some reason in our culture and society, we're afraid to think on our own. Don't listen to social media. Every Sunday I preach, before I get up, I say, turn off the TV. Then let's have conversation, because we don't have human-to-human conversation. We don't see one another, because what we see them through is the lens that the media has painted for us. We're not relying on our own experience and reasoning anymore. And that's scary, all right? If you know what your experience is, go with your experience and say, wait a second, I was just at an event where I had 4 police officers that stood right there in front of me and said that I could come and talk to them. And then you're going to have 7 buddies say, oh man, that's not the way it is. Yes, it is. It's hard to do that. I'm going to show my age, but when I was a teenager, I didn't have cell phone, believe it or not. We didn't have any of that social stuff. So we had to deal with one another face to face, right? Now, I can find anybody at any time, anywhere in the world that will agree with me or disagree with me. No matter what. I can say everything about this man, and you all say no, and I get on the internet and I say, I got this guy beside me, he uses his name, and I got someone who's going to tell me how bad he is, and they've never met him. Because that quick, instantly we can have somebody tell us we're wrong.
Right.
Which is the bad side of the internet and all those things. But I just think we need to get back to personal relationships, one-to-one.
Do you think that's solving some of the issues? Because we're seeing the crime go up, and we're seeing more younger people doing real bad things now. And that was one of the reasons why we wanted to do that juice thing, to say, hey, food impacts, how you think and all of that stuff. But I really do think that we are afraid of each other. I mean, I will say that clearly, because I think that when you look at it, I've been in the nonprofit world 23 years. And every program that I have, when I start looking across the board at what people do, it's a segregation of, if this was in Great Neck, would this be mostly white? You know what I mean? And so I think that until we can, to the point that you made, the safe space, and then building relationships, but relationships will only come when we can come together more.
Yeah.
And if you don't have the time and the officers to do that, then we're going to still kind of like circle the mountain, over and over again. Because I think it's more than just, we're going to do football today or play basketball with the police, and that's going to be it, and we don't see it again until next year. Versus basically we're having something, and this requires all of us to be doing something. And not just doing something in the hood, but doing something in Great Neck in the hood. And I think that's where the problem is, to me. That we have an issue in terms of our socioeconomics, all of those things play into this, and it's creating this segmented society. Teens, and I'm sure you all are going to hear from the teens in a minute, what their view of all of this. But any of you all, before we transition, officers that did not speak, Greg, anything you want to say to what I said in terms of community, and then we're going to transition.
Personally, speaking for myself, a white male, there are times when I'm afraid. Growing up, how do we break that down? That is the question, right?
Right.
How do we personally? I need to do a better job.
Yeah.
I need to reach out. So, like you see, the room is segregated.
Yes.
You see the whites and the whites. Even it starts in families. Have you ever been with in-laws and relatives?
Yeah.
Not even color.
Right.
We are segregated in that environment. But we all personally, I need to do a better job. Supporting the police, supporting the community, supporting my neighbors.
Right.
We need to I know what that's the magic question, right? How do we do that?
Right.
Individually. Families, starting with our children, what we teach, and you know, and it's the habits or the like you say, how do we stop that by coming together in events like this? I think by reaching out to the younger folks, like you say, leaving some type of, like you say, if I meet you and say, hey, you might walk away saying, you know, that guy's not too bad. You know, he's coming from a place, and of course, I'm a man of God. I believe that we can all come together, you know, one nation under God. Here we are, setting the color and those biases aside, loving one another individually. Like you say, all of you said great and wonderful things.
Right.
Now we need to go out and take that
Right.
and implement that into our day-to-day
Yeah,
lives.
so I hear you saying that basically it begins with a personal
Yes.
thing first, and then, and thank you for saying as a white male that you are afraid, you know what I mean? And being able to like go over there and talk to Andre, the black man. I mean, and here we can do it because this is what we do all the time, but the point is, I think that we are in a space now where I believe part of our issue is that we are afraid of each other. And we're not going to break down this thing until we figure out how do we do that, and communities coming together that normally don't come together. And so, officers, I want to give you all, I know you spoke, do you want to add anything to this?
I would just say, excuse me, that a lot of this, in my opinion, and this is something that we deal with internally within our organization as well, so it's not just on a societal level, it does have to start small. And I stress this to our officers because they're always asking, you know, how do we get the public to want to congregate with us? Well, first, you have to learn how to congregate with each other, and you're not doing that. We have differences in our backgrounds. You know, we come from different places, we have different ways that we were brought up. We understand that. We have a fear of the unknown. Take the time to get to know people individually and not just because they live in this neighborhood or that neighborhood. Once you start trying to break down those barriers, that's when you start to see the person sitting beside you or in front of you and getting to see that individual that you spoke of. And I said, if we can do that internally, then we can start doing that externally, and maybe that will show the public that, hey, I care about you as an individual because you're a human, not just because of where you live or where you may not live, or, you know, these cultural differences. We've got to look through that other person's lens and try to learn them as an individual, and hopefully that can bring the police departments and our communities closer together. And start small, simply put.
Officer, you came in, do you want to add anything to this conversation before we transition?
How much time do we have? You might want to be careful with that question. So I'm Lieutenant Gervin. I work in the West Virginia Beach, but I'm the recruiting and selection recruiting director at the academy. There's a lot here, and I'll say this because I know we're trying to be cognizant of time.
Yeah.
You said something earlier that I think is one of the foundations of the questions that we need to focus on. You said that there's a lot of fear, and you said you mentioned the word afraid, which was then capitalized on by a couple of panel members here. So the question is, what is fear and why are we fearful? What are we fearful of? Right? It's a little bit of a rhetorical question, but I think it's something that we should take on and think about. What is it that we're really afraid of, and why? Right? And that crosses that crosses color and race and ethnicity. That goes into just police and civilian relationships as well. What are we really afraid of? And then something Kevin said earlier that I wanted to kind of segue into that. Where are we getting our information from? So if I'm fearful of something, am I really fearful? Is it a true fear? Or is it something that I've been told? I teach a class at the academy, and it's called Fair and Impartial Policing. And not to get into that, but there's a piece of it I wanted to mention was we asked the recruits, the brand new recruits, we asked them, you know, what do you know about, we throw out different topics, different ethnicities, countries, whatever, right? And we watched them challenge or struggle to answer the questions because some of them are hard, right? And it's done purposely because I want you to tell me something about this element that you probably don't know anything about. But what I want you to really do is give me something you've heard. And when you give me something that you've heard, then I can challenge you on and go, why do you believe that? Who gave them, right? And so that's the blessing and the curse of media and social media. We have to be very careful with where we get our information from and who's vetting that information. And then, of course, deeper, is there an agenda behind it and what's being pushed and all of that?
Right.
But we're in church, right? We're in church. So I think it's okay to say this. I mentioned that question earlier because it was purposeful. What do we fear and why do we fear? What is the opposite of fear? Love. I think God made it very simple when he challenged us with the greatest commandment. He said, what? To love God and to love people. We won't have to worry about fearing people if we love them. How do we love them? Well, we have to connect. It's been mentioned. Everything that we need has been said amongst this panel. We just have to weave it together, and then we have to do the hard work.
Right. Yeah.
How do we love people? What does that look like? Right? And I can't love people, and including myself, and people that look like me, if I'm listening to images or I'm listening to things and I'm watching things that is damaging to my own self-respect, my own self-preservation, right? And man, there's so much here.
There's so much.
There's so much, and I know I gotta stop,
Yeah,
right?
yes.
But we have to be very cautious. Young people have to be very cautious of what we listen to.
Right.
What we listen to and where we get our information and who is influencing us is very important. I'm probably the last person, if you really knew my history, maybe we'll get into it later, but probably the last person that you would expect to be sitting in this seat in this room, right? I was raised in the projects of Newport News by a single mother who had me at 20 years old. I was on welfare for the majority of my life and grew up in the projects. So hearing that story, just by the way we stereotype and bias people, you would never think that little boy from Newport News would grow up to be a police lieutenant in Virginia Beach Police Department. But somehow it happened, right? So what I'm saying when I say all of that to say this is I grew up in a neighborhood where I saw violence, I saw gangs, I saw drugs. I listened to hip hop. I'm still a huge hip hop fan, but I'm well aware now to know that hip hop in certain instances had a very damaging effect on what we are trying to get our young
Teens. This is the question that, the whole panel, but specifically I want to target the teens for this. Because you all are teenagers understanding or seeing what's going on in the community at large. So my question to you all is this, that you can help the officers. What can we do to address the issue of gun violence amongst youth? So think about that. What can we do? What can we do to address gun violence amongst youth? Because that's an issue. Every day we're seeing something, and somebody's 13 or 14. We all saw Rich, that 6-year-old, bring the gun to the school and all that stuff. Tatum, you got your hand on your head, so you want to start?
No,
You're still trying to think. You're trying to process that question, right? What about you? Okay.
I really don't think it's any different from what you guys and those are saying. I think it's really all community based. And also another thing is, so I heard a quote that says, if you don't see with your eyes, you see with your mind. And so it's really a mental barrier that we have to break. And because teens can be a little socially awkward, I don't know, and talk about that kind of stuff. But I think it's underestimated how much talking and communication and public speaking can actually do to help your fellow teens in your community.
Interesting. Interesting that you brought that up. What you got to think? What you got to say, Mike?
I think it's like what one of the officers had said about, it starting at home, I think, or, yeah, I think it really depends on a, location, per se, because it's like, everything starts somewhere, something starts somewhere.
Right.
And I would just say that, I'm sorry, but I would just say that everything does start at home. Everything has a starting point, and they're all originating to where you are most comfortable at. To me, it's just like an environmental issue. And I just think that there needs to be safe space as the man. There needs to be safer space, and
Safe spaces for teens.
Yeah.
For teens to have conversations about gun violence, or just safe space for teens to just interact all together?
You know, so basically, you know, just for everybody to, you know, communicate, as she just said, communicate in a safe space, you know, to, for a point where you're more comfortable at where you are, and that will need to happen. But, yeah.
Okay, what you got, John? What you think we need to do about this gun violence that's going on, specifically with younger people? Because, I mean, guns are everywhere, and you all know. Teens know who has the guns and who don't have the guns. Teens know they may not necessarily be telling parents. So what would you say about that? What can we do to address the issue of gun violence amongst teens? She said, everybody's walking me over. Freeze up on my question. You don't know. Okay. Tatum, I'm coming back to you now.
I think the main thing is all steps back to social media. Cause like, you see like Instagram, like rappers,
Elevate your voice.
rappers like and fake people like they show guns as a way of like self-defense now, and when you have those people like as idols nowadays, it's going to get like you see young youth people like, use it now.
I remember, I don't know, I can't remember the year. Do y'all remember the year that the young man, Tamar Rice, was killed? And he had, you said 2016? He had, it was a fake gun, right? So the police come on the scene, not knowing whether or not it was a real gun, fake gun, and he ended up being killed. And so, when I was thinking about this, I was like, what would make, him think that a play gun was something that you should have when police officers arrive or what have you? You know what I mean? It was crazy because of the fact of how it went down. So officers, my question to you all is with this gun stuff, because you all don't know fake from real or whatever when you come on the scene. And when you're dealing with teens, how do you approach them? How do you deal with them in terms of this gun violence stuff? Because it's escalating, and we see that. So we got to figure out a way. I know home stuff, and there was something about I was saying the same with gun safety. You could have a gun in your home and like, okay, I'm hiding this from my kids. Your kids know where your guns and stuff are. You know what I mean? And so what would you all say to them? Because she was stuck. She didn't know. Basically, they were talking about, you talked about this whole mind thing of how they think, right? And then you're saying a safe space to be in, and Tate, now I forgot what you said over there on the end of it.
They, like rappers, how you see them as idols. So like, when they talk about like music and stuff.
So carrying the gun sort of kind of like this in vogue, it's the thing to do. Is that what you're saying? It looks good, but you don't carry a gun.
No.
And so does that look good to you?
No.
So it looks good to certain ones, but others not so. And here's the officers, let me get you all in here. I think what happens is this is a prevention program. Because the guys or girls who are doing it will not come to a space like this. And I think that's an issue too. That the kids who we are serving, primarily not kids that are going to be in trouble, right? The kids that we want to get to are the kids who are out there carrying the guns, and those kids won't show up either. So I don't know how you all would deal with that, you know what I mean? In terms of, what are you all saying to kids in terms of gun violence? Anyone that you all want to take that?
I'll go ahead and start with
Okay.
that. And I can tell you from a parental perspective, I have two teenage kids. I have a son and a daughter. And what I did personally is I exposed them to firearms very early. So I'm talking grade school. Not to the point where they were handling firearms, but I educated them about firearms and showed them what firearms did, because I didn't want them, number one, to be afraid of firearms, but I wanted them to learn to respect firearms. I wanted them to be able to understand the purpose of firearms from a law enforcement perspective, because that was the reason that I had them. Now, as they got older, the conversation became different because the way that they were going to view them as they got older was going to be different. Their understanding was going to be different. And I didn't want social media to play a part in how they understood firearms to be used or what their purpose was. And what we're dealing with now is a completely different type of teenager than when a lot of us officers were teenagers. There are a lot of different challenges that are going on right now that we didn't have when we were growing up. Right now, the firepower that we as officers are against as it relates to the criminal element is so much greater than it was 10 or 15 years ago. And unfortunately, a lot of the people that we're dealing with now are teenagers.
Right.
So trying to get to our teenagers that are of that element, like you said, the ones that are in this type of event are not the ones that we need to target. We need to be very intentional with our outreach to those that we know to be a part of the element. And we have teenagers that will come to events like this, that will, maybe not in this type of setting, but that will communicate with us. I know that this person is carrying guns, and we are able to go talk to that teen, talk to the parents. Fortunately for us, when it comes to social media, some of these teens will post videos, will post pictures on the internet, on different social media platforms, and we are able to intervene with that method. So we send, investigators out. We show the parents what we're looking at. We show the teens what we're looking at, and we're able to do something then. Unfortunately, this is a big problem. It has been for some time. We've got a lot of work to do as police officers. And thank you all for coming up here today to work with us, because without you all, we're not going to be able to tackle this. You guys are going to be sitting in our seats, some of you, 10 years from now, because we're old heads now. We're dinosaurs, as they call us. So some of you all will have to take our seats and continue this fight. But this is something that we're going to have to continue doing for years to come.
Anyone else?
I'm looking at you.
So, to touch on a few of the things that have been said, I think there's three prongs to this issue. One is the availability of guns. People not being responsible gun owners, leaving them in their cars, people breaking into their cars, parents not keeping their guns locked up. If someone wants to get a gun, they're going to get a gun. No matter how many gun laws are in effect, they're going to get a gun. It's illegal to murder. People are still killing. So gun laws alone are not going to stop them from getting guns. It is a status symbol, for whatever reason, to have a gun. You don't see a lot of adults on social media flashing guns, but you see a lot of teens doing that. It's a status symbol for whatever reason. And when you have a gun on you, you're more likely to use it. So the third issue is there is a lack of conflict resolution and de-escalation skills among the younger folks. So when you get into that fight, we all know teens, hormones and emotions, whatever, are high. When they get into that fight, they're going to pull out a gun and use it. So, when we were growing up, it was fist fights. And now that fist fight quickly turns to someone getting shot. So those are the three issues we really need to combat. How we do it, that is the question. So that's what we need the teens to help us out.
Yeah, teens. For those of you all who are sitting here, how do you all think that in the audience? What do we do to address the gun laws? He just said having a gun. That was just like the dope way to do to have your own gun. So, you all want to add to that?
See, I think is we use guns for self-defense. So, we use guns as self-defense. So, everybody think they need a gun because to defend each other from. Because they have one, we need one. So if they pull a gun out, we can pull a gun out of them too. I can see that point of view, but it's when they want it, like, we trying to prevent them from getting guns and stuff. It's like, I understand that if
We need to teach we need to teach young and teens about guns early on, like Dallas said. We need to teach them at a young age so they understand the danger of guns, and then we understand that guns are meant for self-defense for people who want to defend their homes and stuff, but we need to communicate with the cops so they understand. They the ones that really need the gun more than the civilian, because they the ones that trying to prevent them by the other person from killing that person. So if a person is trying to break into a person's home, we need to make sure the civilians understand that they. I don't know how I want to word this. If a person, usually people use guns to intimidate people. We trying to get what we want and get it out of there as fast as possible. But the people who have guns at home, they want them to prevent, they trying to stop them from doing what they're doing in the trap. So we need to understand that we need some way for teens to get what they want in a way, or not taking it from other people. So
We kind of get where you're going. And I think, and the other piece of this too is that with the availability of guns, you can get them so easily. I don't even think that fighting fist to fist is the thing anymore. I think what teens believe is that you do need to have a gun. You need to have a gun to defend yourself. Now again, for those who are in the room, that's not the teens that we're trying to reach. We're trying to reach the teen who basically probably like, that's not a cool thing that you're coming in here talking to police officers, you know what I mean? And so I think there has to be programs, and that there are, that can reach out to that specific group of teens, because we're not attracted to them. They're not coming to ours. We are in that prevention mode to make sure that these kids that are part of our programs don't get, rude on the other side. And so it's a crazy sort of kind of dynamic that's going on, but we gotta figure it out. And I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer to that. And I think that this is part of our issue with what we're seeing nationally with the violence of teens just escalating more and more. So with that said, I want to take us to our next question, because I do want to honor the time that we said we were going to do. Teens, how do we build relationships with police officers? So think about that, because they want to know how to reach you all, because you all are in schools. What grade are you in, Tatum? 9th grade. What grade are you in? 10th grade. What grade are you in? And then you're homeschooled, correct? Yeah, and you're finished. So when here we got all this going on, so you all know individuals, you all know people. How do we build relationships with police officers? I was thinking about this question when I wrote it down. Outside of getting to know Chief Wright from over in Chesapeake when he was the chief of police, Chief Newdigate, Officer McNeil, Chief Loki, and somebody else, I wouldn't have had a relationship at all, and outside of my son being a police officer. And so, if families are not having relationships with officers, I think it makes it very difficult for teens to have that. So my question to you all is, how do you build relationships with police officers? I'm coming to you next. So we'll start over here with you. How do you build? Loud voice.
I would think like a good way to do it is like in school events.
In school events, okay.
Police officers, because like in school events, you get like a good feel about what you're learning about. So like, for example, for me, like last year, our school had like a really good in school event for the SOLs, and like because of that, I believe I really did good. I think that's the reason why I did good on the SOLs. So when I think that's like, you have like a couple of police officers from the Virginia department come down to a school which like certain like different activities and events, like icebreakers, done.
So you think in school is a good place for it to build relationships? What about you?
I think what they all said about doing actually coming onto the team's turf and going with them. And I think another thing is like just for a second stripping away the badge and the uniform and talking to them as a human being instead of a cop. Like this is not just a cop. This is a human that has real emotions, real feelings, and real hobbies. So talking to teams on that sort of level.
Okay, okay. So coming into the spaces where you all are, and not necessarily at school.
Not yeah, just
Okay, it could be a community somewhere. It could be basketball. It could be somewhere, right? So you're saying coming into that spaces. I want them to. They're gonna respond. What you got? What do you think? Okay. You get look. I ain't voice. Say it again. Louder voice. You got the little voice. Go ahead. Okay. Okay. So reaching out. All right, I'm going to you because you know you were in the law academy before. You said, "Hey, great. What can we do to build relationships, Ari, with police officers?"
I feel like she said, it's like,
Louder voice.
I feel like you shouldn't be looking at just officers, they also are. I feel like not just even knowing the message, just taking time out of your day to say something. But just how so it's a lot of ways to do that.
Okay. Like what?
Take the time out of your day to find a reason, or not even just a reason to say something, or just a conversation.
Okay.
By itself.
Okay. Now, he said they have 800 officers, right? And so they got some spread out in the schools and all that stuff. So what would be, I know reaching out to them, because they got to figure out how to reach out to you all, and then to have the time to do it, because they running over here, because Junebug and them and robbed the grocery store, they going over there, and somebody's doing something. And so trying to make the time. And so you all just heard what they said, right? So what would your response be to, I'll go with you, technical.
Trying to, I think someone said it, maybe you said it. The kids that usually come to the events, whatnot, that we're holding are not always the kids that we need to reach the most. Not saying anything bad about the kids who do show up. You know, it's good to keep them on the right path. But the kids who are desperately in need of attention and direction are the ones that are the hardest to reach. They're the ones that when we go into the neighborhoods and we get out of the cars and try and talk to them, or play basketball, we get a certain finger, or you know, derogatory comments, and we walk away. We can't chase them. You know, so they're the kids who are the hardest to reach.
Right.
And I can tell you, going back to it starts at home. They're getting a lot of those negative perceptions of the police from home.
Right.
Several years ago, I was working an event at the library, a teen lock-in event, and I was walking through the hallway, and it was right after Ferguson, and I hear this girl say, "Hands up, don't shoot." So I challenged her. I went up and said, "Hey, who said that?" And this girl was very proud. She said, "I said it." I said, "What does that mean to you?" I don't know. I said, "What are you saying?" She's like, "Well, cops are bad." I said, "Really?" And she was wearing a red dress. I said, "So how would you feel if I said, I hate everyone wearing a red dress?" "Well, that wouldn't be right. But you don't like me because I'm wearing this." And I challenged it. And we had probably about a 20-minute conversation. And a few minutes in, she's like, "I like you." I said, "But don't forget, 5 minutes ago you didn't like me based on what I was wearing." And she educated me, and she's like, you know, she lives in Lake Edward, and she said, we're taught from a young age, if a cop knocks at the door, don't answer it. If we're seen talking to the police, we get our butts kicked by the neighbors. So when we're going door to door looking for information for shootings and other crimes, they're not opening the door because they're told not to, and it's a cultural thing. And I was able to educate her on, you know, some of our practices. You know, why they maybe stopped when walking down the street. It's not always the officer who's stopping you. Sometimes we get calls from neighbors about you doing something. Whether you did it or not, we have to respond with those calls for certain. So, that 20-minute conversation was very beneficial for me and for her.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually had a group of kids that gathered too and heard it as well. That's the kind of conversations that we need. And I was able to change her opinion. And she even said, hey, when I see a cop now, I want to come up and say hi to you. So, but how do we reach all those kids?
Yep. Other officers on the panel, want to engage in that. You sit up here like that. Okay, just take your time. Just go a minute into that. How about that?
There's a lot.
You can do it.
I'll just say you can do it.
So, the question I was going to ask earlier, I can't remember who was talking about, but there's like this persona that teens are carrying guns for protection. So, back in the day, rewind a little bit, people that were carrying guns and people that were utilizing guns were looked at as, so not cops, but just in society, right? Looked at as the bullies, the aggressors.
Right.
Now we're in a time and space where the victims are carrying guns because they're fearful of bullies, right? So the bullies and the victims, everybody got guns.
Yeah, right.
So here we go again. We're back to this element of fear.
Right.
There's a fear element that is driving this behavior. I'm carrying a gun because I want to protect myself from the bully.
Right.
Bully is like, well, maybe he's awesome. Well, I'm a bully. I'm gonna go get that money. I'm gonna go rob somebody. Right? I'm gonna take your car. Opportunists, whatever. Why are they doing that? Because there's maybe an economic disadvantage. Maybe there's a want. Maybe there's a need. Maybe there's influence from social media or rapper. I'm trying to get that chain too. I want that chain. That chain gives me status, so I'm gonna take his chain. Right? So we have to come back to what's our common ground? How are we gonna do it?
Right.
What is it that we can do within our parameters and in our control, right? So I think with the relationship building, one of the things that we can take away today is let's have intentional conversation.
More.
Intentional, right? Yeah. So let's not wait till a police and community event. Let's not wait until there's an event at the school or there's, special operations is out in the community. Let's have conversations on a normal, because if we want to be looked at as normal individuals, right? Without the uniform, without the badge. So when I'm in 7-Eleven, when I'm in Kroger, in uniform, whether on duty or off duty, and I see, we attract attention. The uniform brings people, oh, there's a cop, right?
Right.
I recognize that. And I'm aware of that, so I intentionally engage in conversation because I know that may be the only interaction they have with a cop that year, that week, whatever, right? So I'm gonna try to make it a good one. And it's tiring sometimes because, sometimes I'm trying to get my groceries and go home, right? I work a 12-hour, 14-hour shift, I'm trying to go home. But I recognize that when I'm in uniform, I have to do extra. I have to be that person that seems common. Hey, how's your day going? Cops asking me a question. Okay? And it's not about what you're doing or where you're going because I'm trying to do an investigation. I just want to know about you.
Right.
I see somebody I saw a kid wearing soccer cleats. Hey, who do you play soccer for? I play for soccer, da-da-da. Oh yeah, my son plays soccer. Now we're having a conversation about soccer. Right? So I look for something common, and I think if we do that, if cops and citizens do that, look for opportunities and intentionally engage about something outside of cop work, it makes the conversation, makes those interactions normal. My old chief said something that was paramount, and I still carry it. It's hard to hate up close. So the closer we get, the more we communicate, the more we know each other, it drives hate out. And so when we do that intentionally, I think that's the starting point. That's something that everybody in this room can do when they leave here today and continuously do. Is just have conversations.
Wonderful. So teens on the panel, I asked you all to think of a question because we're kind of winding down and I want the vendors to come up. But is there a question that you all want to ask the officers while you all here? Because you're a captive audience, you know what I mean? How many teens can say, hey, I was a part of this panel discussion trying to figure out what do we do in our communities to try to get teens engaged, because the gun violence has got to stop. And I don't know what stop is, you know what I mean, in terms of where is the stopping point? How crazy will it get before, you know, we just say it's all gonna crash and burn if we don't stop? So I'm going to turn it to you all. Is there a question that you all would like to ask the officers? Now you've just been burning in your heart. I just want to ask the police. If I ever get a chance to ask the police, I'm gonna ask them this. Questions?
I guess,
Okay.
with this whole topic, I guess one of my biggest questions now is, what is y'all's plans to end gun violence?
What is it? So you're asking them what are their plans to end gun violence? That's a deep one right there. That's a deep one. Okay, how much time you got? How much time you got? So, officers.
I think it's multi-tiered. I think Kevin used that earlier. You know, I don't think any of these questions are simple. The answers or solutions are simple. They're usually complex and they're usually multifaceted. So I think one is education. And education is, again, multifaceted, two-tiered. It starts at home and it's programs.
Right.
Through the police department. So we educate people. We do, you know, social media information. You know, hey, these are the number of people that are affected by gun violence. You know, and this is what it looks like. This is how you can do better. How you prevent it. Also, there's the enforcement part. Virginia Beach is very concerned about violent crimes. And so we need people to understand that there's a penalty. Right? There's units that we have, teams that we have that are dedicated solely to that, to preventing, preventing and enforcing gun violence. So if you commit a gun crime, if you commit a violent crime, there's a heavy penalty. We want people to realize that, right? So sometimes we got to step away from the education piece and realize that, hey, we've been talking, we've been trying to educate, we've been, you know, talking about the consequences. But now we're at a point where there's some enforcement, right? And let's just be honest, that they're jail and prison are real.
Right.
And they're real consequences. And we need to talk to our teens and our kids like, hey, this is the road that you're on. This is where you're going to end up. And make it real, right? I told a kid years ago, I said, I've never been to jail. I said, but I've been in jail, right, as an officer. I said, so here's how you get that perspective of what it feels like. Go lock yourself in your bathroom for 12 hours. Just go sit there. But there's just a toilet and a sink. You don't get your phone, you don't get your tablet, and see how that feels. Because that's the road that you're on. That's what you're about to set yourself up for. And a lot of times teens don't have that ability to project out.
Right.
They're in the moment. You know, my boys ride with me, we got this gun, we're about to go do something. Think about the consequences. Think about what that's going to mean for the next 20, 30, 40 years of your life, sitting in a box, in a bathroom. Because that's what it is, right? So it's multi-tiered. It's education, it's an enforcement piece, it's doing more of the things that we need to pull that to pull our teens, pull our kids, pull our grandkids out of that element. Right? It's a wolf that we have to pull those who we love and those who are connected to us and everybody that we can reach out of that element.
Yeah.
Because it's dangerous.
It is very, 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 very dangerous. Okay, Pastor Ox got a burning question from the audience. Go. And we're going to do that, and then we'll do one more question from the teens, and then we're going to end this segment, okay?
So this is a question for the teens because I think this has changed. I may be wrong, and I'd like you all to prove me wrong. That's really my hope, okay? I want to know how you understand authority because these gentlemen are authority. I'm authority as a minister or because I'm the authority of this church. Veronica's authority of this program. You know, so they have, so when I wear my robe or collar, I have a certain authority because we've talked about that when you go into 7-Eleven. But I want to know what how teens understand authority. Is it negative or positive? Because I think that's changed. We used to go to authority when I was a teen for protection and for education and for safety and learning. I have the sense And that's why I'm asking that a lot of teens and younger people see authority as a threat right off the bat. Can you give me
Y'all,
a...
a short answer to all of this? You answer, you have a, you got? Who? Okay, go ahead, Ari, go ahead with that.
I mean, from me knowing, like, not my perspective, but I know, so I can tell you that it's not more we looking at them as bad people to us, it's more what they do to us. I'm not saying, like, if you do the consequences, it's more of them not wanting to do the consequences for the things that they've done. So they know that they can put us in jail. So it's more of a avoidance kind of thing. So if you know you're not supposed to be doing what you're doing, you avoid the troubles.
Okay. So you see authority as somewhat of an avoidance sort of kind of things, what I'm getting from that. And go ahead, Mike. How do you answer Pastor Ott's question in terms of how do you see authority?
Well, I think, in my opinion, it's very complex. Because it's just like you said, there's like a moral to it. So it's like, you know, it can be positive. It just really depends on the person that like there's the authority in. So, but in my perspective, I think it was positive because I was raised by people who know how to use their authority to correct me if I'm wrong, or, you know, to show me that, you know, how to do things a certain way. And I just feel like at the end of the day, authority can be a positive outcome if you know how to use it.
Got it.
So
You see authority as what?
I see it in both ways. See, if adults literally use their authority to punish kids, but they don't do it for themselves, like if the adults see you doing the things that you keep saying, we not do, I think that's unfair.
Okay, I see what you're saying. So,
It's like
yeah, okay. Yeah. Okay.
Goes back, you know, it's gonna go back to home.
Yeah.
I was raised. If your kids don't respect you,
Right.
what makes you think they don't respect you?
Right.
Not where they don't know to act like this when they're in public, but when they home a little bit. You know, if they doing this in public, just believe you're not listening to them at home.
Right.
So how do you expect them to act
Right.
against anybody else if they don't respect you?
Right. Exactly. And then too, also in authority, I think also, you know, I can remember teaching at the college level, and I used to tell all of my students, I'm the sheriff of this town. I'm the sheriff of this town. And that this, in terms of coming to class and all of that stuff, you all have to come to class. The class is at 8 o'clock, so that's what you have to do. And so what I saw was my students rise to my expectation. You know what I mean? And I think in terms with families and all that stuff, when you allow your children to do whatever, if they talk bad to you, they're going to talk bad to me. And when I'm doing programs and all that stuff, that's a no-no for me, because Frankston and I were just you can go to exile. We're not going to see you anymore in terms of our program, because they're not expecting the authority. So we basically kind of enforce the authority thing that we have. Because I'm not going to have a 10-year-old saying crazy stuff to me, because the 10-year-old is going to be out of the program. So I can immediately get away from that. But oftentimes when you all are faced with that, you know, y'all got the kids hollering, the families calling names, and everybody shooting the bird and all that stuff, and you all having to walk on the scene and deal with all of that. You know what I mean? And so, all about this authority thing. I saw your hand before we went to. What is your thing for authority?
So I think a separate thing is it has to be a mutual respect thing. So if the ones that are having authority placed on them feel that type of disrespect or intimidation, or just like that type of thing, they're automatically going to react negatively and feel like it's disrespect and not going to want to respect that person.
So you're saying, in terms of a young person basically being respected by the older person, is that what you're saying? Yeah.
So punishment, just having that mutual respect that this is not just a younger person, this is a human being.
Okay.
Respect.
Okay. That's interesting. Okay, that's interesting. That's very interesting to me, because that challenges my 63-year-old mind. You know what I mean? that it does, because I'm like, well, you're 16, and I get what you're saying in terms of not being disrespectful or not seeing you as person, 16-year-old, versus me being 63, because I think that there is a level of respect that we have lost in terms of, for this generation, older to younger. Go ahead, Francine, I see what you're saying.
No, I'm moving real quick.
Yeah, okay.
So when I was growing up, we go back to what we know, because that is the root of it all. What
Right.
we know, how we grew up. When I was growing up as a teenager, I could not disrespect anybody
Right.
that was an adult. If you lived on my street, Miss Mary next door, and I disrespected Miss Mary, Miss Mary was gonna send me home and tell me, I'm telling your mom, and she might even do something else to me, but we can't do now.
Right.
And before I got home, my mom knew that I was sassy to, we call it sassy, to Miss Mary, and then my mom took care of it.
Right.
So now we have parents who won't admit that their kids are disrespectful because they're not respecting them. Their kids have no fear, they don't fear their parents, they don't fear God, and they're gonna show don't fear the police officer.
Right.
So they have no fear in that sense. Because when they're growing up, they hear that you probably not gonna live, especially for our young men, you're probably not gonna live till you get 18.
Right.
Because of the things that you're doing.
Yeah.
But I, as a parent, allowed you to do them in my home.
Right.
So I have to take responsibility, and I think that's where it boils down to. The parent has to take responsibility. And you walking down the street, it used to be if this young man, who's my grandson right now, if he was saying cuss words as I'm walking towards him, he would stop and he would tell the other kids, here comes Miss Francine. Don't do that. They don't care now. They just keep on saying the cuss words and even get louder.
Right.
Because what's she gonna do?
Right.
And if I say, where's your parent? Well, my mama about that life. So
Right.
don't tell my mom. She
Right.
don't care.
Yeah.
That's what they're gonna say. And so we have to tell the truth about it.
Right.
That it starts at home, and if you're allowing your children to disrespect you, then they're gonna disrespect others.
Right.
They're not gonna see authority figures. And for me, in order to be respected, you have to earn my respect.
Right. Okay, I see Lisa. Right. Okay, I see Lisa over here in the back. I told you it's gonna be a long conversation. Lisa gonna do it. We're gonna throw it to the police officers, and then that's gonna be a wrap. Because I want our vendors to have a moment. This is great conversation, you all. You have to do it again. Go.
I think it's like what the young lady said, it's authority, how to use your authority, because like you said, you do have that situation, like what my son said, we taught him to respect everybody, but sometimes I've even seen it where he's being disrespected and he didn't do anything at all, because we gotta I want to say we got to catch up to the times, not so much in letting things go, but kind of understanding that it's a trauma there. It's a big trauma between adults and children where we haven't healed from what our parents did. How they grew up, because that's where we are now. We're from upbringings that brought us to different traumas, to, different lifestyles that, where the respect and the authority is in the mix. Because how often, and back in the day, was you just to be quiet, that's it. You can't say anything. And they might want to say they got raped, they got robbed, they got, but you had to be quiet, you couldn't talk. So now it's like, if I can say it's like now, you couldn't say much back then, but you saying too much now. So it's no middle ground, so it's just like we gotta, I'm raising them and I'm young, so, it's hard for me sometimes because, I've done different things with you all programs where I had to raise my confidence as an adult, to say something for myself because I was raised to not say anything for real, to respect everybody, but we are in a world where when you are respectful or you're nice or whatever the case may be, you're taking advantage of it. So it's like, oh, she's real respectful, well, I'm gonna disrespect her. So how many people at work are disrespected for being respectful? So it's just like finding the common ground because yes, kids are very disrespectful, but I think it's through frustration that I have in voice in situations. How many times they get cussed out about something that they did or didn't do or somebody else did. So it's just like, before we jump down their throat, like we're doing now, you're giving them a platform to say something. And in this situation, they can say what they feel and it may not be right. Like they're speaking without cursing and everything like that. So it's not right or wrong, right? They just say how they feel. But, when you're frustrated and stuff, or when you feel like everybody's against you, you're going to speak in a hostile situation. And with the police, a lot of times it's emergency. So they're already getting a call that it's a hostile situation, it's an emergency, it's a this, it's a that. So everybody's temperature is already risen before they get there. So the respect is lost when almost when the police in and the victim, or you know, where they're trying to solve. So it's like, I know sometimes I don't respect that, but like, you know, when it's common when a police officer comes in and like, hey, everybody calm down, you know, let's, and you give each person a voice to say something. But if you come in, like she said, with just authority, I'm the police, or I'm such and such, everybody shut up, this is it, it's over with, nothing is really resolved. It's just kind of like a whole, like what you were saying, you know, take the top off a little bit, let the steam come out, and then, you know, we can kind of come around and stuff.
Wow, this is crazy. A police officer, if you all want to comment on the comments that have been said, and that'll be our last comment. I know we can go on and on, but I do want the vendors to have a moment, and I do want you all to do the photos and all of that stuff. So anyone, go ahead.
One thing.
One thing.
Saying it starts at home all day.
Right.
One thing I guarantee all of us have heard at least 100 times in our careers. We walk into 7-Eleven, there's a little kid, and the parents say, if you don't behave, he's going to arrest you.
Right.
So from a young age, they're afraid of us.
Right.
And now as they grow up, we're trying to combat that fear.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I didn't expect them to come to us when they're afraid of us.
Yeah.
So please, don't say it yourself. If you hear someone say it, challenge them.
Right.
You know, you're not helping the situation.
Right.
Because we're not going to arrest that little kid.
Right.
And sometimes I tease the parents, like, no, actually, I'm going to arrest you.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I do that too. I say
Yeah.
that too. I leave the little kid and say, no, no.
No,
Yeah.
give them a sticker and, you know,
Yeah,
high
yeah.
five, but
Yeah.
that's not helping the situation.
Right. That's so good. Well, we're gonna have to end our conversation today here because we could go on and on and on, and we know that this is just the beginning of more conversations. And I would like the next time that we do this that we have a more diverse group of people that are here, so that we can say that, because I don't think it's going to be one community at all just solving the issue. We need every community to be a part of the solutions for us to do it, and definitely we need parents to be parents. So kudos to you all for doing an absolute great job. Let's give yourselves a hand.